Wants to introduce Chris Hayes from the Australian House of Representatives. Bringing society is going to be, yes, sorry, I'm the Australian Deputy High Commissioner. We're certainly chasing a call for you with our High Commissioner as well, so yeah. Yes, we'd love to. My wife is actually the Education Counsellor in the High Commission. We're very keen to talk to you about TVET too, so she's met Newell this year and we had some people from up in Australia this year, so we'll find a time. The coordinator is that, so yeah. Great. Well, I know when we met Lynn Wang earlier this year, he said we want things studied in Australia himself, very keen to learn from our TVET. We can talk about that another time.
Testing. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to invite all guests to be seated as the program will begin shortly. We would appreciate it if you could kindly set your phones to silent mode throughout the seminar. Another short housekeeping announcement. Please stand upon the arrival of Mr. Speaker and the group for Malaysia's national anthem. Hadirin diminta berdiri untuk menyanyikan lagu negaraku. Please stand for Malaysia's national anthem. Hadirin dipersilakan duduk. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Majlis mengucapkan selamat datang dan mengalu-alukan kehadiran para hadirin ke program Regional Parlimentary Seminar pada hari ini. Seminar ini bertujuan untuk memberikan ruang kepada ahli-ahli parlimen, organisasi-organisasi hak asasi manusia dan wakil-wakil masyarakat madani untuk berbincang isu-isu yang berkaitan hukuman mati. Seminar hari ini dijalankan dengan usaha-sama ECPM dan Anti-Death Penalty Asia Network (ADPAN). Saya memohon izin untuk meneruskan acara hari ini di dalam bahasa Inggeris. Please allow me to continue in English. His Excellency, Datuk Muhammad Arif Mat Yusof, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honourable Mr. Kulasegaran, Minister of the Human Resources and Chairman of PGA's Malaysian Chapter, Honourable Datuk V.K. Liu, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Her Excellency Mrs. Maria Castillo Fernandez, Ambassador and Head of the European Union Delegation to Malaysia, Mr. Rafael Shinwil Hazan, Executive Director of ECPM, Ms. Ngiao Chow Ying, Member of the Executive Committee of ADPAN, members of the Diplomatic Corps, honourable members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to all. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all participants to today's seminar entitled Standing Against Death Penalty in Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to invite His Excellency Datuk Muhammad Arif Mat Yusof to give his welcoming remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning to all. The Honourable Mr. M. Kulasegaran, Minister of Human Resources, Chairman of the Parliamentarians for Global Action for the Malaysian Chapter and member of the PGA's Executive Committee, the Honourable Dato' Liu Wee Kiong, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Her Excellency Mrs. Maria Castillo Fernandez, Ambassador and Head of the European Union Delegation to Malaysia, the Honourable Mr. Edsel Langman, Member of the House of Representatives of the Philippines, Mr. Rafael Shinwil Hazan, Executive Director of Together Against the Death Penalty, ECPM, Ms. Ngiao Chow Ying, Member of the Executive Committee of the Anti-Death Penalty Asia Network at PAN, Ms. Shamini Darshan, Executive Director at Amnesty International Malaysia, Mr. George Varghese, President of the Malaysian Bar Council, Mrs. Samana Malaika Raza from the Policy and Advocacy Strategies for Justice Project Pakistan, Mr. Charles Hector, lawyer and coordinator of Malaysians Against the Death Penalty and Torture, MADPAT, honorable members of Parliament and members of the Parliamentarians for Global Action for the Abolition of the Death Penalty, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, respected speaker, representatives of various religious groups, distinguished guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, a very good morning to all, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to all delegates to this regional parliamentary seminar, jointly organized by the Parliamentarians for Global Action and hosted by the Malaysian Parliament. It is inspiring to see so many of you who are sincerely passionate about the abolition of the death penalty gathered here this morning. The choice of this topic itself, standing against the death penalty in Asia, envisages the pervasiveness of the spirit of liberty of an individual. Ladies and gentlemen, as early as 2009, Malaysia's representative in Geneva informed the Human Rights Council that Malaysia was considering replacing the death penalty with life imprisonment. Pakatan Harapan's General Election Manifesto 2 has outlined and indicated an intention to abolish laws imposing the mandatory death penalty. The Malaysian Parliament, as host of this timely seminar, is pleased to be able to accommodate and provide a platform for this discourse, to engage, debate, and dialogue with the various agencies, educationists, stakeholders, and lawmakers to push forward the agenda in abolishing the death penalty. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia is one of the remaining countries that belong to the so-called retentionist countries that still maintains the death penalty compared to 142 other countries, including the European Union. To date, I am informed there are over 1,200 inmates on death row here, and over 900 of them are for drug-related offences. The numbers have been increasing over the years, which is some evidence that the death penalty has perhaps not served to be a deterrent for various crimes in Malaysia. In the Asian region, Timor-Leste and the Philippines are abolitionist countries. Brunei, Laos, and Myanmar are countries which have not executed the death penalty in the past 10 years or so, whilst the remainder nations, Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, are retentionist countries. Ladies and gentlemen, the Malaysian Parliament, which is the pinnacle of parliamentary democracy in this country, has always been at the forefront of upholding civil liberties, accountability, good governance, and more importantly, to be defenders and protectors of human rights. This seminar on the abolition of the death penalty is timely, given the renewed commitment in Malaysia to adhere to international human rights standards. This seminar will provide the opportunity for our lawmakers to further expand their knowledge on the subject and to be able to present a greater depth in argument on this subject. As Speaker of the Parliament of Malaysia, the rule of law is something I uphold, advocate, and cherish, which rule of law obviously must also correspond with the right to a fair trial and golden principle that every person is innocent until proven guilty. However, no one can guarantee there will be no miscarriage of justice, and because the death penalty is irreversible, the consequences of executing a man or woman who is innocent is a risk and danger that the criminal justice system must address. In Malaysia, death by hanging is still part of the criminal justice system for offences relating to murder, gang robbery with murder, kidnapping, drug trafficking, certain kinds of treason, waging war against the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, and terrorism-related offences. Many surveys and research papers over the abolition of the death penalty have been presented over the years. The debate has been whether or not the death penalty should be abolished completely, either for all crimes or at least for drug trafficking and the firearm offences not leading to injury, or whether, as a first step, the mandatory element should be replaced by a discretionary system to be used in exceptional circumstances. Many reasons have been enumerated in support of the abolition of the death penalty, and to quote one source, namely the report by Amnesty International, the death penalty carries inter alia the following risks. It is irreversible and mistakes happen. Execution is the ultimate irrevocable punishment. The risk of executing an innocent person can never be eliminated. Others have been executed despite serious doubts about their guilt. The death penalty also does not deter crimes. Countries who execute commonly cite the death penalty as a way to deter people from committing crimes. This claim has been repeatedly discredited, and there is no evidence that the death penalty is any more effective in reducing crime than life imprisonment. It is also often used within skewed justice systems. In many cases recorded by Amnesty International, persons were executed after being convicted in grossly unfair trials on the basis of torture-tainted evidence and with inadequate legal representation. And the death penalty is also discriminatory. The weight of the death penalty is disproportionately carried by those with less advantaged socio-economic backgrounds or belonging to a racial, ethnic, or religious minority. This includes having limited access to legal representation, for example, or being at greater disadvantage in the experience of the criminal justice system. Similar conclusions are offered by the Inter-Parliamentary Union and the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner in the Handbook for Parliamentarians, number 26 on human rights. Namely, the deterrent effect of the death penalty is not supported by evidence. Modern approaches to justice favor the rehabilitation and reintegration of offenders and recognize that offenders have human rights too. Also, the death penalty increases the risk of judicial error and the execution of innocent persons, and it legitimates a form of cruel, inhuman, and degrading punishment. The Human Rights Commission of Malaysia, Suhakam, too has recently made a number of recommendations this year, calling for the government to uphold its commitment to revoke the mandatory death penalty in all acts, to establish a moratorium on the use of the death penalty pending the review of the relevant laws, and for the government to accede to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and its protocol, which aim at abolishing the death penalty. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand that the PGA on the death penalty, ECPM, Amnesty International, ADPAN, MATPAT, Human Rights Watch, and also the many members of Parliament, even from the former government, have lobbied and urged for the death penalty in this country to be abolished. As for this seminar, the amount of research and planning put into this seminar must be enormous, to say the least. Allow me to congratulate the organizers for the very hard work they have put in to make this seminar a success. It is my sincere hope that you will arrive at a solution or solutions that will be acceptable to all. I must thank the Parliamentarians for Global Action for their unstinting support and cooperation in making this event possible. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to conclude by thanking all of you cordially. Your presence here today demonstrates your conviction to the cause of abolition of the death penalty. This Parliament represents, obviously, the voice of the people through its lawmakers who must fight for what is right without fear or favor, including matters related to the death penalty. This seminar will no doubt contribute to clarify the ongoing debate on the merits and demerits of the death penalty. I therefore wish each and every one of you the best and a productive engagement with the various parties. I look forward to the findings of this seminar and to a fruitful and lively debate. With that, thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next, I would like to call upon Honorable Mr. Kulasagaran, Minister of Human Resources and Chairman of PGA's Malaysian chapter, for his opening speech.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The Honorable Dato Arif, Speaker of the House of Representatives, my colleague, Dato' Liu Wiu Kiong, Minister in the Prime Minister Department, Her Excellency Mrs. Maria Castillo Fernandez, Ambassador and Head of the European Union Delegation to Malaysia, Mr. Rafael Colonel Hassan, Executive Director of ECPM, Mrs. Neo Chow Ying, Member of the Executive Committee of ADPAN, Honorable Liu Chin Tong, Deputy Minister of Defense, who I will specifically mention something about him later, so that he will sit through and hear my speech before he goes back. Excellencies from embassies and high commissioners, friends from the legal, academic, and civil societies and fraternities, members of Parliament, State Assembly persons, support staff from the Protocol Division, led by Ms. Lavinia, and members of the press, and in particular, also from the PGA, Ms. Marian and Holly from the Parliamentary and Global Action. Good morning and salam harapan to all my friends, colleagues, and those who are involved in the death penalty abolishment, who have come from near and far to attend this seminar. We meet at an opportune time because the current session of the Malaysian Parliament may debate the abolishment of the death penalty. The Minister of Law is here. Maybe he will announce something to that effect. I don't know, although I am a member of the Cabinet. The word on is that the bill for its abolishment may be tabled, and the prospects are good that it will be passed. The former Minister of Law and the former Minister of Tourism, who chaired the PGA meeting last week, was one of the strongest proponents for the abolishment of death penalty. It was some 10 years ago that he, together with the former ambassador of the European Union, Mr. Pickett, and the great man, Honorable Liu Chin Tong, who's now the Deputy Minister of Defense, we were all hatching together as to how to get this topic across to the nation, to start a ball rolling so that it gets public momentum to somehow abolish the death penalty. At that time, some 10 years ago, we decided on two things. Number one, let's go on a first step. First step is to abolish the mandatory death penalty. Somehow, after about 9.5 years, last year, in the month of August or September, we were able to abolish mandatory death penalty for one particular drug trafficking offense, which was, we successfully had it done. Then the matter picked up again, and obviously one of the strongest person who has been writing and speaking about this is none other than Honorable Liu Chin Tong, who I owe a lot. Unfortunately, apparently he has got no time to speak on this matter today and tomorrow, because the issues of defense is much more important in the nation than anything else. The Malaysian nation has recently been in the world's headlines with a peaceful transition of power from a long-staying party to a rival party through a choice made by the people. Now the newly elected parliament may have another step in its process and its mission by abolishing the death penalty. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue of the abolishment of death penalty has been close to my heart from the days as a criminal lawyer, defending those who have been convicted and sent to the death row. Having been a witness several times to that experience, I conceived and sustained a determination to see to its abolishment. My aspiration to see the abolishment of the death penalty is no longer a dream. Like an idea whose time has come, it has gathered strength from the process and civilizing currents let loose in society by technological and material advancement. With the advancement has come intellectual and moral enlightenment, without which the philosopher Immanuel Kant claimed society cannot progress. Sure, there continues to occur at this time and in various parts of the world heinous crimes against humanity, crimes that give pause to the notion that the world is progressing in a moral sensibility. Still, there is no denying that Kant is right, that it is through intellectual and moral enlightenment that we progress. I would argue that on the issue of death penalty, our sensibility has progressed to the point where the irreversibility and irreparability of the penalty is so stuck to reality there can be no blinking of our eyes before its finality. In Malaysia today, there are 1,279 people on death row for various capital offences. Of them, 710 are Malaysians and 569 are foreigners. Over the past 8 years, Malaysia has also executed 33 people on an average of 4 people per year. Why am I sharing numbers and facts and figures? Because the discussion and the debate and the argument on death penalty must be one that is on evidence-based data and case studies. Numbers of inmates on death row has increased and is proof that death penalty is clearly not a deterrent. Malaysia, which used to have jury trial, was abolished in the 80s, which binds the hands of judges in cases where mandatory death penalty, where you are guilty before proven innocent, and the burden of proof is on you to prove your innocence. 51% of death row inmates come from a lower social economic background. 34.4% come from those who are unemployed or having no stable employment. 5.32% come from a relatively well-off social economic background, and 8.76% of them are businessmen. This means in a combined number, we are looking at 85.4% of those on the death row who are unemployed or belong to the lower economic rung. Criminals need to be punished, and government need to prioritize this by getting to the root of it all, which is fighting crime and not ending lives. Like the European Union family, which has collectively rejected the death penalty, I hope that soon the ASEAN member states will also see an end to death penalty. Malaysia remains committed to seeing the death penalty abolished as a party to respecting sanctity of life and to the defenders and protectors of human rights. Before I end my speech, I would like to state my deepest appreciation to all who have been lobbying together with the Parliamentarians for Global Action, PGA, particularly the former Minister, Dato' Nazri, the EU Commission, the Norwegian Foreign Ministry, the Australian High Commission, ECPM, Amnesty International, ADPEN, MedPet, the Bar Council, Suhakam, MPs, and others who have become now Deputy Minister of Defense, Honorable Liu Chintong, and many other stakeholders who have worked tirelessly to be the voices of the conscience on this journey to end capital punishment. Special thanks and support to the support staff from the Speaker's office, as well as to Ms. Lavinia and an excellent team who have worked hard to make this significant seminar a success. Not forgetting Holly, Marian, and Mary-Lena from the PGA team. I hope you'll find the sharings, the discussions, inputs, and debates on the topic of death penalty useful for you in your work to create an awareness to the general public, and I also urge friends from the civil society to reach out to every layer of society, to reach out to the man on the street, to educate and empower him with knowledge on the need to abolish the death penalty. This morning, as I was talking to a very senior lawyer, Mr. Siladas from Johor, he suggested, why not we carry out a program around the country to go and reach out to the ordinary public, which I have agreed. I'm sure the Deputy Minister of Defense will also agree. We will visit his constituency and invite him to speak. And I agree with you, Mr. Das. I think that has to be done so that more reach out and understanding on this issue can take place. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call to order this regional parliamentary seminar on the abolishment of death penalty. Thank you. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I will be calling quite a number of people to the podium today. Next, I would like to invite Honorable Dato' V.K. Liew, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, to deliver his keynote address. Thank you.
Don't worry, it wouldn't be this long. It's just a few pages of my speeches, but I wouldn't take this long. Terima kasih kepada Pengantar Majlis, Honorable Speaker Dato' Muhammad Arif Muhammad Yusof, Honorable Minister Mr. Kula Segaran, my colleague, Honorable Liu Ching-tong, whose name has been mentioned about 10 times by Minister Kula. Okay, Her Excellency, Mrs. Maria Costello Fernandez, and also not forgetting Mr. Rafael, also Ms. Chow, members of Parliament, ambassadors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera. I'm honored to stand before you here today to be these important seminars on the abolitions of these death penalties, where the government had made the decisions on the 10th of October to abolish all forms of death penalty in these countries. We have 32 offenses under 8 laws that invite death penalty. And that decision was made on 10th of October, as I said, on the day where the world, it was a world day for abolitions of death penalty. I did not quite realize it until very late in the evening on the 10th of October when somebody emailed me and told me that, did you know that you just make an announcement on the abolitions, on the World Day on abolitions of death penalty? It was such a coincidence because that 10th of October was Wednesday where Parliament sat. Sorry, when Cabinet sat in the morning. Ladies and gentlemen, that distinguished man here is here, the one who told me about the World Days on abolitions of death penalties, Andrew. I was in prison yesterday. I cannot name you the name of the prison for security reason. But I went there not to serve a sentence, but I wanted to see for myself how it was all done, especially how a death row inmate would be executed. And this morning, when I look at my handphone, there was an article by a former judge recounting his experience, how a man on the death row would be executed. Ma Weng Kwai witnessed the executions of 2 brothers 35 years ago. And he described the process as how the prisoner would be brought to the Bilik Akhir, which is the execution room and the chamber before he is put on the rope, and then the process would start. It only takes about 15 seconds. Despite the fact that Ma witnessed the whole thing 35 years ago and described in great details what took place, the same procedure as I was told yesterday by the prison staff was the same. It didn't change. The clanging of the trapdoor where the prisoner stood before it's opened by the executioner. The noise, it was so amazing that it's still reverberating in my head until this very morning. And I woke up from that room. I asked myself, has it been worth it to end somebody's life by the state just like that? Prabhu died, and his life was ended by state killing. Has it been worth it? And that is a question I think we have to discuss in these seminars. But before we do that, I want to inform you that in these countries, as Kula has described on the number of statistics, but I want to go further. We have almost 65,225 prisoners, out of which about 40% of them are drug-related offenders. That number, I was told last week, was 59,997. In the span of 1 week, we saw an increase of almost 5,000 prisoners in these countries. And our prison could only accommodate about 45,000 prisoners. So we have a surplus of prisoners in our countries. The prison that I visited could only accommodate about 3,500, but as at yesterday, it has about 5,560 prisoners, out of which in that particular prison, they have 233 waiting to be executed. But the only good news to them is that I had issued a moratorium as instructed by the cabinet to all the pardon spots to stop the executions. Out of the 65,000 prisoners, we had 1,281 on the death rolls. I announced last week it was 1,279. So in the span of 1 week, we saw another 2 fellows that has been sentenced to the death roll. So the question always be brought up by those on the ground is about costing. Why do we need to keep all these people, murderers, drug traffickers? Why do you need to pay for them? It's a taxpayer money. It's costly. But for your information, it costs about 38 ringgit to 41 ringgit to keep one prisoner in Malaysia. Out of that 38 to 41 ringgit, it also includes the traveling expenses for the prisoner, for the officers. It also includes amenities like toothbrushes, clothing, and all that. So that will be about 38 ringgit. But if we take away all that, whereby to keep a prisoner alive, just on providing them food and vegetables, where some of them can grow it themselves in the prison, and then cooked by the prisoners, it will cost around 13 ringgit. So taking that into account, if we time the 1,281 death row convicts that we have, that would come to around 56,000 a day. As against keeping 65,655 prisoners, time 38, that will come to about, my calculation was about 2.8 million a day. So if you time that to 30 days, that is a lot of money to keep them in prison. But not the death convicts, because the statistic is very low. So it is numerically very small to keep the death row inmates in prison. And then, as you are aware, some of them are not allowed to mingle around with the other normal prisoners. Those on the death rows, now it's 1,281, would be kept in a solitude confinement until and unless there was an order from the pardon board to hang him. And you know that the process for them to reach that stage, to get that order from the pardon board, will take almost a decade or more. I was told yesterday that there was a man from Johor, a prisoner on a death row. He could not wait to be hanged, and he died in prison, and he has been waiting for like 25 years. And we have many, many other cases. Personally, I had handled one particular case when the accused was in prison for almost 18 years before the federal court heard his final appeal. And that took him about 18 years for the case to be heard in the federal court. And eventually, when the federal court heard it, they dismissed the death sentence and then found him guilty of a lower offense, which is 39A. And they sentenced him to 20 years imprisonment. So I told the judge at that time that you still owe this man 5 years, because after the wanted remissions, he would be released after serving about 13 years. But because he has been there for 18 years, so there was still this 5 years things. But that fact remains, that there is this waiting period that is not justifiable under any human rights conventions that we have. So, ladies and gentlemen, of these 65,000 prisoners that we have, as I said earlier, 40% of them are all drug-related offenses. If you take away all that, Honorable Liu Ching-tong, we will have an empty prison. We will not need to build so many prisons, because if we take away the drug-related offenses, most of them are in because of our dangerous drugs law that defines drugs. And as I was talking to the prison staff yesterday about the old drugs that we are familiar with, like heroin, like marijuana, like coca leaf, like where's the other one? The other old drugs, and they all laugh at me, Minister Kula, and they say these are the old school of drugs. The new drugs that is in the market is methamphetamine, shabu, synthetic drugs that is made of some chemical process. And if we look into these topics of redefining drugs in our countries, especially maybe going into these soft drugs and heavy drugs or hard drugs, that if you are found in possession of it, then you can be in prison. But at this moment, the Dangerous Drugs Act said that if you're in possession of 5 grams of certain prohibited drugs, then you would go in under Section 6 of the Drug Act, Section 9, Section 12, and then Section 38. And of course, the big one is the Section 39B. So if you're in possession of this drug that is more than the prohibited amount, then you will be presumed to be trafficking drugs. But taking that on one side, by looking at the other lower offenses, like if you're in possession of 5 grams of marijuana, you will be inside, and that will crowd our prison. So if we redefine our definitions of drugs, which I think we can look into that, and because there are certain drugs like the other one that I forgot to mention was morphine. Of course, we know that these two drugs, especially marijuana, have some medicinal values, and some countries in the world have allowed it to be prescribed with approval from the doctor. I do not know whether that will happen during my lifetime here in Malaysia, but I will think that we have to work hard to ensure that that can happen, so that we don't see our young people spend their times in prison, because some of them would be there for a period of a long time if they are found in possession of certain drugs. We have police raiding premises in this country, and they're doing all these urine tests on our young people and saying things like, oh, you have tested positive, so you need to be charged in court, and then after that you will be either kept in the rehabilitation center or you'll be kept in the prison and mixing with all the adult criminals. So we have to look at that, and I think important, because if we can take away, let's say, 40% of 65,000 prisoners, that will come to about 40,000 prisoners. So 40,000 prisoners times 38 ringgit to keep them, they will come to about 1.2 million a day. And in 1 month, that will be almost 30 million, 31 million. And then in 1 year, that is a huge sum of money. If we have that money, we can use that money to educate our young people, to have a program for them, to tell them how dangerous it is to be associated with drugs and don't get involved with drugs. That money can be used, instead of using it to feed these 40,000 drug-related offenders, some of which I believe need not have to be inside. And Prabhu, had he been alive, would have been a perfect advocate to tell the young people not to go near drug. But the Kiasu government had decided to take away his life. And the only reason that I was told was because they wanted to execute other people of their own nationalities. And if they don't execute the others, then it will not look good on them. And I didn't sleep for a day just thinking about the rationality of that particular decision that I was made aware of. So ladies and gentlemen, I know when murder happens, it can be very painful for the victims of the family, especially if it involves the father, the mother, the brother, the sister, relatives, or friends that have been killed. And the process can be very, very painful. And they always want to see the murderer receive justice. So in our country, it is talking about death by hanging. In some advanced country that we are being told of, they use electric executions. They use leather injections. They use gas chamber. And of course, some countries that many said is barbaric. They have public execution. They chop the head off publicly. Whereas in some countries, they shoot publicly. And then after shooting that so-called criminals, they would often also go back to the family and ask for the families to pay for the price of the bullets. Of course, we have heard about death penalty in the forms of burning the criminal or whoever then that had happened. But these were the forms of death penalty that had taken place throughout the world for various offenses, especially when it comes to murder. It can be very, very painful. But what do we do with that? What do we do with that? And then, as I said, murder has been with us since time immemorial. It did not happen yesterday. It did not happen last year. It has been with us since the time we know. And that did not stop people from killing each other. So I'd just like to end by saying that an eye for an eye will make the world blind. Muhammad Gandhi had said it a few decades ago, and I think it is still very relevant. With that, I'd like to end by once again congratulating our chairmen for this Parliamentary for Global Actions, Malaysian chapter, Minister Kula, my colleagues, and all of you here, especially our speaker, who has so graciously endorsed the abolitions. Hopefully, we'll see that bill to be tabled, if not in these sessions of Parliament, but I can see that it will happen in the next session. At this moment, it's still the bill IP, which is a work in progress. The instruction has been given, and we are just waiting. And with that, a very, very good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for the very informational speech. Next on the list of speakers today, I would like to call Her Excellency Mrs. Maria Castillo Fernandez, Ambassador and Head of the European Union Delegation to Malaysia, to say a few words.
Selamat pagi to everyone. After all has been said, what can I say? I mean, you've left me speechless. Three key members of Parliament and ministers. Honorable Speaker, Datu Arif Yusuf, thank you very much for your commitment and support for this cause. And of course, YB Kula, thank you. I mean, you were with me here last year in the Parliament, in a different setting, in a different, smaller room, because we were like hiding for our cause. But we were there, and certainly I think the fact that we are here today in a bigger room makes a big difference. And thank you very much, YB Datu Liu. Thank you very much for being the one who is pushing the cabinet in this fight. Very, very appreciated, and you really receive. He merits a very, very big applause for this. I know. This is there is a lot of friends pushing this in Malaysia, and of course, Yongdong, you have been there also last year with us. Thank you very much. And what is important for me is that, despite your different responsibilities that you have now, you continue fight for this and for other causes, and that is a big difference for us. Thank you very much for you and for all. And for my colleagues, the EU ambassadors and Mexican ambassador and other colleagues, thank you very much for this support. This is the EU in all its member states, in its whole, and very, very supportive from the beginning here. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, second time in the Parliament, and such a different, Rafael, such a different framework from last year. And that means that there has been a huge change in Malaysia, and we need to thank you for that. And that you've put the fight against death penalty so very high in your political agenda. I remember, Mr. Kula, you mentioned, and I think we need to mention, and Yongtang, you will agree, the first efforts that were done here. It was in 2011, and yes, the European Union, my former colleague, Ambassador Piquet, was here, and certainly joining forces with all of you in order to start a campaign in Malaysia, together with Suhakam, and together, of course, with the Bar Council, Andrew and George and others. You were very much part of this. And Amnesty International Malaysia and the Chinese Assembly Hall. I remember all of that. I was posted in Hong Kong at that time, but I remember Piquet coming to a regional seminar with just telling us what he was doing on death penalty and why should we need also to do similar thing in our different other countries. So I was part of that, and then I came here, and one of the first events I had when I came here 2 years ago was to open in the photography exhibition of the Japanese painter Toshika Sama. And this was also about the death row, photos of the death row inmates just before they were going to be executed. And I had that similar feeling, Minister, that you had going to prison yesterday, because the pictures were very, very showing of what the inmates go through. And one of them, I remember very well, it was the last meal. And I said, how can he eat anything on the last meal? It was full, you know, a plate full of good things, a glass of wine, everything. I said, your last night, do you really have any feeling of eating anything, of what you had and why the last day? So those impact stories, and I think it's little by little that we have arrived here. And I think I'm very, very happy to be here with all of you today to be able to witness this. This is an effort that should continue. As you know, the European Union holds a very strong and principled position against the death penalty. As you all have mentioned, it's cruel, it's inhumane, it's irreversible, and it's incompatible with human dignity. And you mentioned it all. You don't need to prove it. It's not a deterrent, certainly, and it allows errors, in judicial errors, to become irreversibly and fatal. None of the EU 28 countries applies the death penalty, and therefore we have made it a campaign and main objective of our human rights agenda worldwide. And that is, you know, why on last Friday in Singapore, when the Malaysian inmate was also executed, we also came vocal on that, because it's not that is here in Malaysia or in other parts, it's all over the world. You've mentioned there is a trend, and we must say the positive things. There is a trend worldwide towards more countries, or in practice, more abolition of death penalty. And what you have stated here today, Minister, is already part of that. But you said it in Southeast Asia, there are still many countries, and the majority of countries which still have a death penalty. From that 1,281 inmates that you mentioned, there are 5 Europeans. And that is for us very important. So this is an issue that we take very much to heart. But certainly, please, we want Malaysia to be one of the first predominant Muslim countries to completely abolish the death penalty and to lead the efforts in Southeast Asia, in Asia, in the world, in this, because it's not only a dream. I think it can be reality Minister Kula. So we need to push it. And please count on the European Union and its member states. We will be here continuing your efforts, helping you. Whatever you need for this cause, let us know. Even reaching out to other communities, to the people. We are here to help you. We have done that also in our countries. So we will be your partner still on this, and I know that other also countries will also be with you in this. I know there is a lot of challenges, but you've taken a very courageous step, and we certainly welcome and support you in all this process. Thank you very much to all, and I hope that discussions of today could help a little bit to facilitate this process. We have many of us gone through that as well, and there are many issues that we can learn from each other. Terima kasih. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I would also like to call Mr. Rafael Shenuel Hazan, Executive Director of ECPM, to deliver his speech.
Honorable Muhammad Arif Yusuf, Speaker of the Malaysian House, Honorable Kula Segaran, Minister of Human Resources, Honorable Yu View Keong, Minister of Law in the Prime Minister's Department, dear Maria Castillo Fernandez, Ambassador of the European Union, dear Sho Hing, member of our close partner ADPAN, honorable members of the Malaysian House, honorable representative of embassies, ambassadors, dear friends. What a long way we have done, and we have come. What a long day we have come since the long past. ECPM is close to all the abolitionist movement since many years. We have organized a regional congress in 2015 here, in preparation of the World Congress of 2016 in Oslo. I remember last year as well here in a smaller room, in a different context. And there is a momentum, definitely a strong momentum, and maybe an historical momentum. And I am here, and I would like to be very humble. I have no advices to give. I have only experiences to share. Actually, I am traveling quite a lot all over the world to advocate for the abolition of the death penalty. It allows me to see different experiences, to see different contexts worldwide, from Africa to the United States, and as well in Asia or in the Middle East. I'm going to say 2 or 3 words about the abolition of the death penalty, and I'm going to take the opposite lines on some popular beliefs and stereotypes about the death penalty. First of all, it's often said that the death penalty is a European issue, very different from our societies and our values. Nothing is more false. Do you know which countries was the first to abolish the death penalty? It was China in the 7th century under the Tang dynasty. In the 7th century, China had abolished the death penalty over a century. And they were followed by Japan at the time. And before the 7th century, the only man who could validate execution was the emperor, which means and leads that there were very few executions for the 7th century. So it's not a European issue. In South America, most of the South American countries have abolished the death penalty since many years. longer than European countries, longer than my country, France, who has abolished the death penalty in 1981 only. In my country, in the 80s, in the 70s, it was said death penalty is part of our culture. Death penalty is part of our tradition. Then death penalty is part of what we are. Africa, before the colonialism time, usually in the African tribes, they do not use the death penalty. They use exile, the extradition of the killer outside the community. In most African countries, tribes in the past before the colonialism time. Many Muslim countries do not use the death penalty anymore. They have abolished the death penalty or they do not practice, like Morocco, like Algeria, like Tunisia, Senegal, Turkey, Albania, Bosnia, Djibouti, and many others. Even in the US, Michigan, for example, among other states, has abolished the death penalty in 1868, long before European countries. It's important because I heard everywhere, oh, you are European and you try to export your model. It is not European model. It is the worldwide model. It is a human dignity model. We often heard also the period is not good for the abolition. It is not the right moment. Come back later. But no, there is no good or bad period to abolish the death penalty. We always have to take the opportunity when there is an open door, an open window for the abolition. And nowadays, in Malaysia, it is not an open window. It's a full open door for the abolition. And I hope that we will be able, the government of Malaysia, the parliament, and all the actors of the abolition will be able to let this door open forever. We also always heard that the public opinion is not ready for the abolition. But the public opinion was not ready for when Abraham Lincoln abolished slavery in the 19th century in the US. The public opinions often are not ready when many governments decide to give the right to vote for women. In many countries, at the time, they were not ready. It's a question of leadership opposed to the public opinion. The role of leaders are fundamental. The public opinions are not always and unilaterally and irremediably in favor of the death penalty. When decision makers have made the choice of the abolition, the public opinion always has followed and never has to come back. It never happens. It never happens in no countries demonstrations after abolition to reinstall the death penalty. Public opinion always follows and trusts justice system and follows their government on that issue. Death penalty is also an addition of discriminations. Philip Ashton, the Special Rapporteur of the United Nations on Poverty, reminds that the death penalty is an unfair sentence applied to poor and the most vulnerable. The poverty linked to the death penalty is not even to prove anymore. Abolishing the death penalty is part of social justice. Abolitionists support, it often says too, that abolitionists support criminals and murderers. Nothing is more false than that. It is the opposite. Pro-death penalty support violent censors, social injustice, revenge, whereas abolitionists support rule of law, justice system based on justice and not on revenge. They support human dignity and values. Human being is perfectible. Who has doubt about that? The failure of every justice system leads always to unfair trial, to a break of the rule of law and conduct to have innocent people on death row and executed. In 2016, 60 people have been exonerated worldwide. I don't have the figures for 2017. 60 lives have been saved in 2016, but how many not? There is a famous sentence whose killing to show that death penalty is wrong and turn us into killers. The death penalty do not protect societies to crime, but moreover reinforce the idea that violence is the only answer to violence and continue the endless of that violent circle. Revenge is not justice. An argument linked to the previous one, that death penalty do not prevent crime. It is not deterrent for the simple reason that no one think about the consequences of their crimes. In the last world's safest countries ranked, upon the first 20 countries, 18 are abolitionists in law, and only 2 are retentionists, Singapore and Japan. So that's true, Singapore and Japan are quite safe, with crime rates very low. But there are only 2 among the first 20 countries. And if you take the 51st countries of that ranking, only 5 of the countries are retentionists. What are the balance is definitely in favor of abolitionist countries and shows how much there is no link between abolition and increasing crime rate. It's important because in many media, in many thoughts of the general public opinions, they make the links between both of them. We have to remind also that there is always, and you mentioned, Mr. Minister of Law, the situation in prisons, and there is always a Damocles sword upon the head of prisoners, even in a moratorium situation. There is a post-traumatic stress have been recognized by international standards called the Mandela rules. So we have to take into account this situation. Being on death row is kind of torture, is a kind of psychological and physical situation who can be called torture. It's important to know as a modern countries, modern societies, that we cannot allow anymore this kind of situation. The abolitionists, the momentum is unique right now. 3/4 of the United Nations countries have abolished the death penalty in law or in practice. Nowadays, 114 countries have abolished the death penalty, 28 countries are following a moratorium, and 56 are considered as a retentionist. But among these 56, only 23 carried out executions last year. What does it mean? It means that death penalty is not accepted anymore by most of the societies and countries all over the world. And even among the 56 retentionist countries, only few of them still use the death penalty. It's a trend. It's a new universal trend. And the abolition is maybe the new universal human right at the same level than abolition slavery or the torture at the time. There is a train to catch. Don't miss it. Don't be afraid. The history will remember, always remember, what happens now. And the future generations will celebrate that day. Terima kasih.
Thank you, sir. Last but not least on the list of speakers today, I would like to invite Ms. Ngiao Chiao Ying, member of the Executive Committee of ADPAN, to the podium to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends. Just give me another 10 more minutes. I know it's a long session this morning. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to welcome and thank you everyone for being here to talk about this very important topic at this very important time. I'm from ADPAN, Anti-Death Penalty Asia Network, and ADPAN, of course, our mission is to abolish the death penalty. We look at Asia, but also across the world. For me, I am a lawyer trying to earn a living, not being very rich, but trying to. But 10 years ago, I was involved in one campaign to save a young boy from being hanged. And my life has changed since then. I know at that time that death penalty is not a simple issue. It actually cut across a spectrum of area like sociology, criminal justice system, poverty, women issue, child issues. And I have been constantly searching for answer for certain questions. Like, for example, are humans inherently good or evil? Are we inherently evil that we will do such a heinous crime? Are human beings capable of being reformed? Why are so many drug addicts in and out of our prisons? Is there something wrong with our prison system? Why is Canada recognize marijuana when Malaysia, we sentence a doctor who used marijuana for medical reasons to death? I even asked myself, why am I in this cause? Why do I even care for the death penalty of other people? I have answer for certain questions, but I don't have answer for all the questions. But in search of answer, I hope to be one day a better and a wiser person, I hope. But during this process, I think my convictions towards this cause is stronger and stronger. I have to be honest, I think it is a battle. It is a constant battle, and we have to continue to win the battle within ourselves, also with the system. But today, I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about our country. I'm here to talk about Malaysia. Malaysia movement against the death penalty does not start 10 years ago. It starts way back. I think the Bar Council is the pioneer in the opinion leader, where they have, in the General Assembly, vote for a resolutions to abolish the death penalty. And we have NGO like Hakam, who is also a very vocal and opinion leader in this country. And along the way, for the past 10 years, all of us, most of us, in our own role, in our own capacity, we're trying to do something about these issues. You know, we have Amnesty International building a cell, a prison cell, for you to feel it. We have exhibitions, photo exhibitions. We organize talk. We go as formal as like a national conference on death penalty. But we also have like informal conversations with decisions maker, with NGO, with other people. I mean, try sitting next to Andrew Koo on the way back from a flight, and he will tell you all about the abolition of death penalty. So it is a long movement. It is a step by step. It is not just like that, you know. And today, we have seen a change in governments, a regime change bring opportunity. A door is open, a window is open for us. And I must say that this is not a haste, you know, decisions by the government. It is informed and it's a well-considered decisions by the government. I mean, look at YB Wee Leong, who have even looked at all the figure of our prisons. This is a well-considered decisions. And I must say that this is one of the most courageous decisions that our government takes. I'm very proud. To be honest, I'm very proud. And I really, really want to see this through. And this is a right and a brave decisions that we must support. International community as well as we as a civil society. Some people, you know, a few days ago, even the reporters asked me, what does it really mean? Why do you want to abolish death penalty? What does it mean for your country? Well, it means a lot if I know that my country don't kill people. It means a lot that I know not a single innocent person is sentenced to death and lost their life. It means a lot. But today, I also want to take another 5 more minutes of your time. 2 minutes. Okay, so, okay, 2 minutes. Okay, so I just want to take 1 minute to ask you to look at latest reports and the studies that we have conducted. This report is actually conducted together with Penang Institute. We talk about the high incidence of judicial error in capital punishment. What happened is we actually look at 289 cases, reported cases in our MLJ and CLJ. We extract all these cases and look and analyze the decisions in these cases and see what is the revision rates of high court decisions. And in summary, we have found that on average, 27.7% of the high court decision is reversed in the Court of Appeal, and 50% of the Court of Appeal decision is reversed in the federal court. This goes to show that there is a lot of inconsistency in our judicial judgment. If there is an error made, it is irreversible. People sentenced to death and hanged, and you cannot get him back. So I know I have no more time, but I really, really like to urge you to have a look at this report. Though they are supposed to be inside your folder, but if you do not have a copy, they are all outside on the table. This is a very important report, and it is really timely at this moment of time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ngiao, for the very thought-provoking questions. Honorable members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are going for a short coffee break. But before we go, I would like to invite His Excellency, Mr. Speaker, and the distinguished guests to the front for a group photo. And I would also like to invite the rest of the esteemed guests to join in the group photo. Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we take our places? May I ask for those who feel that you are vertically challenged to stand in front, and those who are not vertically challenged to stand at the back? Do we have everyone in the picture?